see you all. A few years ago, several years ago actually, my wife and I went to Florida for a destination wedding for some good friends, and we did the activity the day before and went on one of these flotilla parties down one of the rivers in Pensacola, Florida. And by lunchtime, we decided to stop to have our lunch, and it was around this area where the river bent. And we stopped on the easy side, the calm side, but on the other side, there was a big tree that had fallen, there were a bunch of rocks there, all this debris. It was a little trepidatious. It looked something like this. The water got a lot faster, too, because the area in which it could flow through was constricted. And of course, a family in a canoe, looked something like this, came along. Kids might have been a little bit younger, and right away they couldn't turn the canoe on the dime like they needed to and went straight into the tree. And of course, this started happening. They started sinking. Mom and Dad immediately went for the kids to try to grab them, to bring them above the water. I saw this along with a couple of my other friends who had been enjoying some cheap beer for far too long that day, but we were immediately popped up and started yelling orders, grab an oar, get some rope, form a human chain. And as I was doing this, I heard splashes and saw people going to the other side, and before we knew it, we recovered that family safely back on dry land. I don't know about the boat, on the other hand. I think Dad might have lost his deposit on that one. That's an instance where a team banded together and performed successfully and effectively. The mission was clear, the goals were there, and we went and followed it. Everybody knew their role, and they followed it. But in business, not that many teams succeed. In fact, Robert Kaplan, the renowned Harvard business researcher and professor, tells us that 90% of companies don't fulfill their strategies, and that's because the teams don't know how to come together to do that. They don't know how to operate together. So if we know what a good team looks like, we should also look to the people who tells us what bad teams look like. And Eunice Carisi Peru from the Ken Blanchard Companies and co-author of Leading at a Higher Level tells us that teams don't perform well when they lack trust, they don't have accountability, they don't know how to communicate, they don't have clear goals, they don't know how to resolve issues. That's what a bad team looks like. Knowing what good and bad teams look like, you would think that there might be a company out there that would try to figure out that magic bullet and a formula to forming the perfectly effective team. One company did, you might have heard of them, Google, and they launched a study over several years across hundreds of their teams to try to figure out what is it that makes that perfect team. And they noticed some trends, they collected a lot of data, but it raised more questions than it actually answered. But what they did find out was that these higher performing teams are when psychologically safe environments are created where team members demonstrate empathy towards one another and communicate openly and equally regardless of their level on the chain of command. I will say there was one team that I joined. I began my professional career in the military at the U.S. Navy and went through officer candidate school and did something like this for about 13 weeks when I first started. There is one organization out there that does know how to effectively build teams, and they have a very psychologically powerful way of indoctrinating people into their program right away. They break you down as individuals and then build you back up as a team. And I went through this type of stuff for 13 straight weeks with 36 of my fellow peers, and to this day, even though we all don't remember our names probably, would still lay down and die for one another. So the military really knows how to build effective teams. They also know how to build teams that respond to change. Adapt and overcome is a common phrase that they give you. And I'll say that I noticed a big change when they called us into a classroom on my 4th week of doing this and showed us CNN footage on September 11th, 2001 of the 2 planes running into the World Trade Center towers. I knew at that moment that a very profound change was upon us all. And this concept of change has been with humans for centuries. 500 years BC, for instance, Greek philosopher Heraclitus said, "All is in flux." And that phrase has been modernized now to change is inevitable. And in fact, the most stable point that we will ever know is right now. Profound change is upon us very soon. And our institution is preparing students like you and alumni like me to make the positive change that we want to in the world. So I'm proud to tell you about a story of when I made a change that was a positive change in the world, and I did it with this guy, Jason. We worked for a software development company that worked for the military. We reported on how ready the military was to go fight and do the war and everything that we built all these great things to go do. And Jason had worked on this team that reported readiness for all of the Navy fleet's aircraft carriers. And there's over 6,000 people and hundreds of planes on each one of those. And Jason had built a product that effectively reported the readiness of all of that. And that's a lot of individual entities to report readiness on. They did a great job. But something changed. The team performance started to go down. They didn't produce features that the customer wanted, and if they did, they didn't do it on time. And then the customer changed, and the customer got upset with our company and wanted to ditch us and award the contract money to somebody else. So I started working with Jason when this happened, and we both got together and asked the team, well, what do you want to do? What do you want to change? And the team, the most important or the most impactful statements that the team responded back to me was, I'm sick of coming into work and getting punished for doing the right thing, or I'm sick of coming into work and not knowing what I'm supposed to do every day. So we decided to implement a process and chip away at it methodically, day by day, week by week, month by month, and practice that process. So when an issue came in, we knew what to do to resolve it. Or when we needed to push out a new feature, we practiced on how to do that successfully. And we got good at it. And we started releasing stuff that the client wanted, and we did it faster and faster and faster. And in just 6 months, we went from the company's worst performing team, known as the Bad News Bears team, to the company's number 2 performer and retained the client and the $10 million in revenue that went with it. We built a culture on that team, and we developed a personality for that team, and we did fun stuff. We did the professional development where everybody worked together and figured out how to work together, but we also gave each other cheesy awards that meant something to us and built our own unique personality and culture. Now, I don't work with Jason anymore. Today, I work for an advertising agency that's part of the world's 3rd largest digital marketing network, and they fly me to all of their offices to work for client teams to do the exact same thing I did when I did work with Jason, and that's get teams to learn how to communicate better and get along better and learn how to operate as teams. And every time I do that, I'm reminded of the passion that I felt when we rescued that family from their sinking canoe on the river in Pensacola. And that night at the rehearsal dinner of the wedding, we all got up together at the front of the room and karaoke this song, Rescue. So that's the advice I leave. If you want to build an effective team, passionately grow and nurture that team. Create an environment of psychological safety where empathy is demonstrated and communication is open and equal at all levels, and passionately figure out a way to come up with a fun personality for that team, and you're going to build an awesome team. Thank you very much.